Well, I started out with a Rally 2B in 1988 and learned to fly in one of those. Had two of them, in fact. And finally, a friend of mine called me up not long after I learned to fly. I was still learning to fly, and he wanted to know what I knew about a rally, and I told him, and he found a Rally 3, wanted me to come help him put it together, so I did, and wanted me to test fly it, so I test flew it. And then I took him up in it, and we flew it around, and he finally got more proficient in it, and flew it a lot, and joined our flying club, and we all flew rallies, weed hoppers, quicksilvers, and other varieties of ultralights, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
How did you find out about the rally? Like Bill Adaska was building them up until about 1984, 85. So you must have bought it off of someone else other than the factory.
Well, a friend of mine had the first one I had, and I bought half with him, partners. He took me down to a private grass strip in the country south of Big Cabin, Oklahoma. That's near Grand Lake and Tulsa area, northeast Oklahoma. And I had seen ultralights before vaguely, but he showed it to me and let me taxi it up and down the strip, and I just fell in love with it. I thought, I got to have one of these. And so I started helping him, maintain it, and he helped teach me to fly it, and among a few other people helped teaching me to fly, and so that's how I got started. I've been wanting to get into aviation all my life, and finally at 42 years old I started and been in it ever since.
Now when you're did you actually put a kit together from a box type thing?
Not a brand new one. I've helped several people put some of them together, and I sort of evolved into a ultralight technician, tech, sort of help people maintain them, put them together.
Because there's a lot of little things on the rally that really had to be changed in order to keep it flying. I mean, there was, on this one for example, there was a problem with the clutches on it and a few other, the overhead stick was confusing to some people.
Okay, most people complained about the overhead stick, including myself. Nobody liked it. There's very few people liked it. It had a motorcycle twist grip throttle on the end of it.
And it had a switch right above that for turning it off.
Yeah, it had a red thumb switch for the ignition, and we didn't like it, so we devised, me and a friend of mine devised the floor stick like in this one, and from then on we recommended them to everybody and put them in, several of them, and it flew much better with a push-pull tube and floor sticks, conventional, instead of the long stick out of the ceiling with the nylon lines on it. That was a modification we done that made the plane better. This particular plane here, I put better wheels. It had bicycle wheels when it came out.
Yeah, originally it had those
BMX bicycle plastic wheels.
Yeah, and every time you got a side load on the
side. You got a side load and a crosswind or anything, it broke them, and you wrecked the plane and flipped it over every time. It seemed like. And finally enough of that, and I went to moped motorcycle wheels eventually. And then on this one, I went to these motorcycle type big scooter wheels with brakes. And cast aluminum wheels are real strong, and they've never given me any trouble. The brakes work good. And so as time went on, I learned to modify the Rally to where it was a better airplane. We mounted a hand throttle, a conventional aircraft throttle quadrant.
In the center.
In the center. I designed and built this gauge panel, and this is my own custom bracket I made for this particular one. I made other kinds. I used to manufacture and sell these instrument panels here. I've sold them for quicksilvers, weed hoppers, other rallies, several planes. And
they also had a lot of problems with the engine packages on these. They were using Cayunas and Sachs and...
Well, the Rotecs finally took over. The Cayuna was the main engine back in the 80s. And then they started using Rotecs, and the Rotecs engine held up a lot better. And everybody started going to Rotexes on them, and by the time you got a Rotex engine on it and the floor-mounted stick with a push-pull tube, brakes, better wheels, they become a lot better airplane. The Rally design is basically a good design. A lot of people like these nose bars because if you hit a fence or tree limbs, you got some protection here. Whereas in a Quicksilver and some other models, you know there's nothing to protect you at all unless you got a pod and windshield on them. And we have put windshields on these and a nose pod. There's a nose pod from the factory that goes with this, and other people has made their own, and it's worked.
And the suspension on this is just, I mean, you can drop the sucker from like 10 feet and just stick them.
The shock absorber, now this is factory from Rotec, and the early ones just had wheels on the axles. They designed this and it made it set up a little higher and added a little weight, but it's much better. And you can taxi and land in taller grass and weeds with this system because the plane sets up higher. The only downside is it makes the king post higher, and you have to have a pretty tall hanger to get it in there.
Well, the other thing, of course, is you've got a 38-foot wing, I think, is on this.
38-foot wingspan. It's the longest wingspan ultralight sailcloth tube and fabric type ultralight that I know of with a wingspan that long.
Now, what about parts and pieces for you basically manufacturing yourself, or do you
Well, if you can't, there's some around the country, yeah. There's even kits around the country that people still have. But there's not a part on here you can't make.
Do you know why there's still kits? Bill Adaska would go to an individual such as yourself at a show or something, and he'd say, hey, listen, if you buy 5 kits off of me, I'll give you a 20% discount, which means if you sell the other 4 kits, you basically got an airplane for nothing. And that's what he would do, is he would sell, if you went, I know places right now that still have 3 or 4 airplanes in their hangar, and the reason is because they were sold 5 kits originally, and they only had the one, and they used another one for parts.
One of the big reasons for people still having ultralights in barns and hangars and kits in their attic and basements and whatnot is, if you'll remember back in, what was it, 85 or 6?
84 was 2020.
2020 did the devastating distorted news media report against ultralights because a newsman got in a pterodactyl ultralight and didn't know how to fly it at all. Said he flew a 172 one time, and he got in there and thought he could fly it, and he crashed it, and they, sensationalized the thing, and it horrified everybody and frightened everybody to where the ultralight industry just about went up end over it.
So how many hours have you got flying on ultralights now?
2,600 hours flying ultralights and GA, mostly ultralights.
Sounds like you're pretty comfortable in what you're doing.
I like it. I've had motorcycles, boats, and used to soup up cars and race them. I did all those things. I used to go elk hunting in Colorado and been to Canada on a moose hunt and all those kind of exciting things, and they were all fun. I still like those things, but flying has been my type of thing. Flying has really agreed with me very well. I love flying. I've been fascinated by it since a child, and I finally got into it. It was an ultralights was an affordable way to get into it.
So if somebody wanted to get in talk to you about something you've done to the rally, or do you have an email address or a phone number so they can contact you?
Yeah, I've got an email address. They could or they could call me. My phone number is 918-256-5170, and if I'm not there, you can leave me a message.
Thank you very much for your time.
And I'd like to add one more thing.
Yep.
The clutch on these, the centrifugal clutch works great, but with bigger engines it wears out faster. And the remedy I finally found after working on several of them is making a steel band to embed and press fit inside of the aluminum drum by turning it out with the lathe and pressing it in there with sleeve locker Loctite, a real tight press fit, and then turning the steel out even, and then the clutch and put modern style shoe material on there. And the bigger the engine, the more flyweight you need for the pressure to hold against the drum, and that will make the clutch last. And it takes a long time to wear that steel band out. And that's not my invention. A friend of mine that had a Rally 3 done that and told me about it, and I done it, and it works great.
Again, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.